You always start with the inner circle and work your way outward. So we initially had to start with her current husband, which is Jamie Bellish. And we looked into where he was that day.
He was interviewed by some sheriff's deputies in Sarasota. He was absolutely heartbroken and devastated.
He told us where he was. He was a salesman for pharmaceuticals, so he had different places that he had been that day.
Jamie said he left the house around 7:30 a.m. He stopped and had breakfast, and then he went to Fort Myers to meet with some clients. He left there around 3 p.m., went to meet with a contractor who was working on the new house.
We were able to later, shortly thereafter, verify everywhere he was.
They quickly concluded he had no involvement in it.
However, when investigators ask who might have reason to hurt Shiela, Jamie Bellish suggests that her ex, Alan Blackthorne, might have something to do with Sheila's death.
They had a very rocky marriage. She filed for divorce. He very much resented it, and they fought constantly for at least 10 years.
Jamie says it got so bad that they decided to move away from Texas.
She wanted to get out of Texas because he was always taking her in and out of court, trying to get custody of the kids, and she had about enough of it. So she left Texas and didn't let him know where she was.
I think it was only Sheila's sister that knew where she was, and one or two very close friends who fully understood that they were not to tell anyone.
Coming up, did the family's disappearance push Alan Blackthorne over the edge?
He had lost, and it became clear that Mr. Blackthorne hated to lose.
In Sarasota, Florida, police investigating the murder of Shiela Bellish have identified a possible suspect, her ex-husband, Alan Blackthorne.
They had been fighting back and forth for, could be close to a decade, from the time of the divorce until 1997. And he would file motions for custody or to reduce child support, and she would file motions to restrict his ability to visit his children. She would file motions to increase child support. It went on and on and on and on.
In early 1997, Alan Blackthorne abruptly surrendered.
He shows up and tells his lawyer that he wants to abandon all rights to the children. He wants to surrender his parental rights. He signed essentially documents giving up any parental rights to his children. And that was a loss. That was a big loss.
While Shiela and Jamie were happy to finally have full legal custody, the fear that her ex had another plan up his sleeve still kept Shiela up at night.
Shiela was a nervous wreck.
And Alan being a very wealthy guy, and she was afraid of him.
He had lost. As we spoke with witnesses, it became clear that Mr. Blackthorne hated to lose.
Jamie and Shiela had quietly relocated the family to Florida.
Jamie was a pharmaceutical representative, and his company agreed to let him move his territory, and they saw an attorney to learn how to purchase that house without being a matter of public record. They were going almost to extremes to prevent anyone publicly from knowing where they were.
Despite their precautions, had Alan managed to locate his ex-wife?
Police contacted airlines and car rental companies to see if Blackthorne had been in the area recently, but they didn't come up with anything.
Placing him in Florida was a long shot at that point.
Sarasota investigators also reach out to authorities in Texas, who contact Blackthorne at his home in San Antonio on November 8, 1997.
He claims he had nothing to do with Sheila's murder, and he just found out about it on the news. Police said he didn't seem like he was trying to hide anything.
We found pretty soon that he was in Texas and couldn't have committed this crime.
But if Alan Blackthorne didn't kill Shiela, who did? Over the next 24 hours, investigators pieced together a series of clues.
They were canvassing the area and they found an employee at a gas station who remembered a man coming in and asking for directions. The address that he was asking for was Mark Ridge, which is the neighborhood where Shiela lived. They also spoke with a neighbor who said they saw something strange around 9:15 a.m. on the day Shiela was killed.
There was a guy that happened to see a strange vehicle in the neighborhood.
The driver was a young man wearing camouflage.
This is a retirement community. Why would anybody be wearing camouflage outfit, combat boots in this neighborhood?
The witness doesn't know the stranger's identity, but he may be able to help investigators find the suspicious car.
He was able to actually give us a tag number, which was a huge break. And we did run that tag in Florida and got nothing, but we knew that they had just moved from Texas, and we ran that tag out of Texas, and it came back.
The vehicle is registered to a woman living in La Pryor, Texas, which is a small town just southwest of San Antonio. When police contacted the owner, she said her grandson was the person who primarily used the car, and his name was Jose Del Toro.
After a little digging, detectives learned that Del Toro is a small-time criminal from San Antonio.
He's in a work release program after a theft conviction, but he didn't show up that weekend.
We needed to talk to him. And in the meantime, Texas Rangers had located his vehicle and were sitting on it. We kind of thought there'd be a lot of valuable evidence in the car, but we needed some evidence to get a search warrant.
While Texas Rangers watched Del Toro's car, investigators in Sarasota contact local hotels, searching for evidence he'd been in the area.
They got a hit on the name at a hotel just a few miles away from the crime scene. Guest records show Del Toro stayed there on November 6th, the night before the murder.
He did use his own driver's license for ID.
Then, hoping to place Del Toro at the scene of the crime, investigators request a copy of his fingerprints from authorities in Texas.
The Sarasota County Sheriff's Office completed a one-to-one comparison of the prints from Jose Del Toro to the latent print that was lifted from the utility room, and they determined that it was a match to Jose Del Toro.
When we got that fingerprint hit, that was enough to get us a search warrant. And then when we did a search warrant on his car, we found the murder weapon. We found the receipt for the camouflage clothing that he bought right down the street from the crime scene. So we had a ton of evidence on him.
Coming up, investigators are convinced that they've found Sheila's killer. But they'll soon be wondering, was he acting alone?
When the conspiracy theory came out, then we knew we had a much bigger crime than what we thought.
Investigators in Florida have identified a prime suspect for the murder of Shiela Bellish, a small-time criminal from San Antonio, Texas, named Jose Del Toro.
We had his fingerprints at the crime scene.
Searching Del Toro's car, investigators also found the murder weapon and a receipt for the camouflage clothing witnesses described.
His vehicle was parked outside of one of his girlfriend's house down in San Antonio.
The girlfriend said she didn't know anything about Sheila's murder. She said Del Toro told her he was headed to Miami to make a drug deal. But she said if Del Toro was involved, his cousin Sammy would know about it.
Del Toro is still on the run, but on November 12, 1997, Texas Rangers locate his cousin, Samuel Gonzalez, and bring him in for questioning.
Tell me what you know about this incident.
Supposed to be just a beating and nothing about the killing was supposed to be occurred. And up to the point when I heard about that and saw the news, and kind of sad about it and disgusted about it.
Gonzalez tells investigators that his friend Danny Rocha had approached him a few months earlier with a job offer.
That's when the conspiracy theory came out, and then we knew we had a much bigger crime than what we thought.
He told us that he was asked to beat up Shiela, and he said, "I can't hit a woman."
Danny started talking about the money involved and said it could be as much as $10,000. And Sammy said he thought his cousin might be interested. His cousin was Joey Del Toro.
Those two traveled to the Velis residence in Boerne, Texas. Timing was good for her. She got away.
They looked in the windows, and there was just very little bit of furniture, and so they reported to Rocha that it looked like no one was living there.
Heard you just moved out of the States.
Gonzalez says Rocha had reached out to him again on November 5th with a new address for Shiela Bellish in Sarasota, Florida, and that he passed the information along to Del Toro.
Okay, so he's supposed to get down to Florida, punch her, and that's it. All right, what happens next?
Sammy claims that Del Toro came back on November 8th and told him that he had fired a gun at Shiela.
He said he shot her, but he didn't know if he hit her or not, and so I didn't didn't want to hear about it. So.
He said he shot at her, but didn't know if he hit her?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
You mention anything about cutting her?
no, he didn't.
According to Gonzalez, killing Shiela wasn't explicitly part of the plan, but that he wasn't surprised it happened.
Danny had asked Joey to beat her up in a way that she was not able to take care of the kids. But he said that the best way to do it, just if you want to use 10 grand, is to kill her.
But when investigators ask Gonzalez if he knows where they can find Del Toro, he tells them that Shiela's killer has already fled to Mexico.
Joey is told by someone who had spoken to his grandmother that the police were looking for him, and he was wanted in connection with the murder of a woman in Sarasota. So he takes a bus to the border and walks across the border, and he's gone.
With Del Toro on the run, investigators focus on the men who allegedly hired him, and the man they suspect is behind it all, Alan Blackthorne.
Why would Danny Rocha? Why would Sammy Gonzalez? Why would Del Toro put a hit on Shiela in Florida? It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. But if Mr. Blackthorne comes into the picture, it makes all the sense in the world.
Talking to associates of both Alan Blackthorne and Danny Rocha, investigators soon established that there is a connection between the two men.
Alan Blackthorne and Danny Rocha's relationship, everybody knew about it. They were big-ass golf buddies.
Danny Rocha was a very good golfer, not PGA quality, but he was a very good amateur golfer. And he gambled.
He was a golf hustler, and he would play golf with Alan Blackthorne and make a lot of money because he usually would win.
The bets were sometimes $1,000 a hole.
But we needed to get Danny Rocha to get to Alan Blackthorne.
Investigators suspect that Blackthorne had also offered Rocha 10 times that amount to get rid of his ex-wife.
It all came back pointing towards Alan Blackthorne.
Sammy Gonzalez's statement gives the authorities enough evidence to take the golf hustler into custody for conspiracy to commit murder on November 17th.
The Texas Rangers actually went to his house and arrested him, brought him to jail in San Antonio, and then we extradited him back to Sarasota.
Getting him to talk isn't as easy.
I sat in on some of the debriefings of Sammy and Danny, which could be brutally difficult.
We didn't get much from him.
Rocha refuses to flip on Blackthorne, but will the investigation be stalled for long?
November 20th, investigators find out that Del Toro's been arrested in Monterrey, Mexico.
Then we had to try to get him back from Mexico. And that turned into a political circus because at the time, Mexico would not let you extradite anybody out of there if you had a death sentence on the table.
Coming up, with Mexico being a possible dead end, investigators try a different approach and hit a new roadblock.
So I said, "You're going to get life in prison." And he said, "I'll roll the dice."
By mid-December of 1997, 1 month after the brutal murder of Shiela Velis, authorities believe they are close to unraveling the conspiracy that led to her death. Suspected triggerman Jose Del Toro is in a Mexican jail, awaiting extradition.
All the politicians had to get involved and try to work out those details.
Samuel Gonzalez has already agreed to a plea deal for his role in the plot.
Sammy was just a big teddy bear. I don't think he would even get in a fist fight. So I think he got used in the whole process, to be honest with you. But he did get the best deal because he cooperated.
Alleged middleman Danny Rocha has refused to cooperate. But on December 16th, prosecutors charge him with criminal solicitation to commit capital murder and pressure him to turn on Sheila's ex, Alan Blackthorne, the alleged mastermind behind the murder.
I went to the jail and I interviewed him several times because we really wanted Blackthorne.
Eventually, between the jail interviews and statements Rocha makes to the media, investigators piece together what happened.
Danny was looking for some money, and he had some ideas in his head about how he might be able to start a business or whatever with Mr. Blackthorne. And Mr. Blackthorne started talking about Shiela and started talking about how bad of a person